Now, there are a lot of things that she was doing right in her life, but the one thing that the doctors pointed to was her diet. What are your food sources? And I was studying agriculture, and she pushed me one summer. I came home on Christmas break. I need my own backyard garden. And Dr. was shaking her head because I came to her and other people, and we got it going. I would say 75 to 80% of the produce that my mother and the rest of my family was consuming came from our backyard. Having studied in Cuba, a world leader in organics, and I think at that point I was in Vermont, where I was studying sustainable agriculture, again moving further away from that term or commercial term organic, but moving towards more sustainable, environmentally friendly kind of ways of growing food and so forth. It pretty much helped me to be able to grow things in the backyard in a manner that promoted a healthy and active life, not just for myself, but also for my ailing mother who was healed partially through food. Again, 3 pillars to food security. As I stated, availability, access, and use. So we go back to all people at all times, the access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food, and the use to maintain a healthy and active life. I really want to emphasize those, and I want you all to take those things home with you when you go back and you think about this evening. And food security is really and truly the result of proper national planning and a joint effort between all entities. We have Mr. Manuel Messina here from AICA, who does not represent the government, but he represents a larger international body which liaises with our government to enable these interactions between private and public sector, which when you think about food security and all these different things, you'll realize that food security goes into sustainable agriculture, which I'll talk about next, but it has to connect all people. You got to connect everybody, all right? We in this room represent a very privileged class, and I know we range in classes and so forth, but we are all people, none of us are starving. Everyone there looks pretty healthy, all right? So we'll move on from here. The next slide, please. So sustainable agriculture, which I think is my true passion, what really, really drives me and why I pretty much do what I do. And it's defined by sustainable table as the production of food, fiber, or other plant or animal products using farming techniques that protect the environment, public health, human communities, and animal welfare. This form of agriculture enables us to produce healthful food without compromising future generations' ability to do the same. This reminds me of an adage, an anecdote that I like to refer to, where, a lot of us, we sit in the shade of trees that someone planted years ago. But are we planting trees for the future generations to sit in? I don't have kids yet, but the majority of you in here have kids. Mr. Goodfellow spoke about the fact that he tries to grow food that is safe and healthy, something that he would want to feed his children. All right, not necessarily using the term organic, and I kind of agree with him in the sense that we allow that term, which has been distorted and turned into a marketing thing to an extent, to make us feel that all things organic are all right. But there are different organic certifications according to where you are in the world. Okay, in the U.S. they have the USDA, which pretty much governs it for the entire nation. In Europe, their standards are a lot stricter, and it varies from product to product. Okay, so chicken organic standards are not the same as cattle or beef organic standards, and beef organic standards are not the same as dairy organic standards. So we have to kind of think about these things and look at what these different standards mean according to where our food is coming from. And yes, the majority of our food comes from the United States, but there are certain products such as mangoes that majority come from Haiti. Lamb, majority come from New Zealand. All right, so we have to think about these different things and know where the food comes from. All right, and for me, sustainable agriculture came from the fact that I went to go and study that because as a child, I was always outside. always outside. I hate being indoors. I think I spent a summer working with Mr. Messina in the office, and it drove me crazy. He had me doing research. Mind you, I love to research, I love to learn, but there would be times when I just got up and I had to walk outside and I would look at the trees in the yard. I don't know anything botanical. I don't like trees that don't bear fruit. That's just me, all right? But I would go there and look at them and try to find features that reminded me of another plant that I might have studied that's in the same family or same genus type as this particular tree. You know, so sometimes I'd notice something that's a legume, meaning it's in the bean, peas kind of family. It may not be edible, but I'd look at it and be like, boy, this looks a lot like, it looks like moringa. It's a tree type legume, or maybe it's a bean, it's running on a vine, all these different things. And I began to look at the fact and think to myself that everything on this earth that is natural has a purpose. Everything was put here for a purpose. And we as humans were put here as bastions, or not bastions, but as stewards and the maintainers of the earth. And we all hear about, global warming and all this stuff, and I don't want to stray on that, but the fact is, through agriculture, through technology, through, dare I even say, capitalism, we have become destroyers of the earth. Down to our cars, which are necessities, some things we really can't avoid using, but at the same time, a lot of what we do is damaging. But if the one thing that we need to survive is food, next to water and air, which are naturally provided. But how many of us are about to go walk in the bush and figure out which one of those berries we can eat? Who's gonna just pick a random berry and eat it? Nobody. All right, so as Dr. Hubbard said, about 10,000 years ago, agriculture as we know it today started to develop. Can I get the next slide, please? And so continuing with sustainable agriculture, the basic sustainable model, whenever you hear sustainable, it should, and I say should very firmly, not loosely, because sustainability has been used and thrown around in every different sphere of business and everything. But anything sustainable should encompass these three things: society, the people, the environment, as well as the economics. So I am very pleased to see that the Aquaponic Research Center is operating a pretty sustainable model. They are a pretty sustainable model in the sense that their water is rain harvested, and they realize that our groundwater, while it's pretty good for most uses, it's not good for what they're doing, but they're keeping everything in the system. So that their environmental aspect, the economic aspect of their project would be that they're keeping most of it in-house. Yes, they have to buy a portion of their feed for their fish. Yes, they have to probably add a few more chemicals or additives to the inputs to the plants, but for the most part, they're keeping everything in-house. It's almost a closed circle. And at the end of the day, we all know that nothing is ever going to be a closed circle in this world. That's just not the way things function anymore. So they keep everything pretty much in-house. And then of course the people, we saw that they're employing people. It's not just him when they're working. And as well as a portion of their food that they grow is going to their restaurant, which is feeding people, as well as it's going elsewhere to help and feed the community. So those three things you always have to keep in mind with sustainable agriculture. And a form of sustainable agriculture that I actually fell in love with during my time in Vermont was agroforestry. And I personally believe that is probably the most idyllic way for us to farm in the Bahamas. Why? We have forest type structures just across the road here. You have a pine forest, or pine barren as we refer to them in the Bahamas. Pine is usually a symbol of water. Pine trees grow where there's a lot of water, and of course it may not be the best water, but it's water, and plants will take from the ground what they need and leave what they don't. So if I was to design a agroforestry project right across the road with that environment we have there, believe it or not, we could probably grow a whole lot of food to feed a whole lot of people. Why? In agroforestry, you have, what is a forest? A canopy, a middle layer, a shrub tree, shrubs, grasses, vines. And then you want to get fancy with it, you throw some chickens or some goats in there, and you now got a protein. With our environment, we have a lot of sun. So the canopy layer allows sun to come through, but when those leaves fall and provide natural mulching, the moisture is retained into the ground that falls during the rain, therefore you need less water. So in our southern islands, this would be even more ideal, okay? We don't have a lot of tree farms, so to speak, in this country, but yet we have such an abundance of trees that grow wonderful, delicious fruits that people from all over the world would love to try. Now, you're probably gonna laugh when I tell you this. I studied agriculture. I consider myself an agriculturalist, but I work in a hotel. The opportunities in agriculture are pretty limited. I don't have the means to go out and start my own farm, and I highly doubt a bank is gonna give me a loan for $500,000, and the government is gonna give me a grant for, 100 acres. So right now, it's kind of tough for me, but I'm doing what I can, and I'll get into that in my next phase. But, these are simple things that we could do as individuals. And to the next phase, can I get a next slide? Backyard farming. This is something that I very, very heavily promote. Why? Because it's a step to individual food security. And if we can become individually food secure, if I may, we could be a step closer to our country becoming food secure and cutting down heavily on that $1 billion plus food imports. All right, let's keep that in mind. We import $1 billion plus worth of food into this country. That isn't good for anybody. And a country with under 500,000 people, that's really, really crazy. All right. It can be done sustainably, and if you want to, it can be done organically. And it brings people together. And this one, when I was putting this here, I thought about it. Me and my mother got closer because of our garden at home, but also it's a conversation piece for a lot of people. I have people who have asked me to put in backyard gardens, and these people do not want to farm or go out there and lift a finger. They just want it there so that when their friends come over, they can say, I got a garden in my yard, and this kid, he comes and he takes care of it. And we're laughing, but for me, that's not what I really want to do. I want you to get out there, and I want you to get active. You gotta get outside. And getting outside, a lot of us don't spend time outside breathing fresh air, and one thing we are blessed with in this country is the lack of factories. And my girlfriend lives in the States, I have a lot of family from the States, and every time they come and they touch down, even at the airport with all those airplanes and all the exhaust they put out, they say, man, I can feel the fresh air every time I go out. I land in Nassau. So just to get outside and breathe fresh air, for most of you who sit in offices all day, is really something that's very, very important. Okay? And getting active. A lot of us are not active. Most of us don't. If we walk up the stairs to get to our bedroom, or we walk up the stairs to get to our office, and from the car inside, that's about the most the average person does. You get out there in the farm, in the garden, you crouch down for a bit, your back may hurt, but guess what? You probably need that because your back hasn't been stretched out for a long time. All right? So these are things that you really have to think about and that you need and that help you. And at the end of the day, it's extremely, extremely rewarding. And though I have a picture of crops there, I had about 7 chickens in my backyard, and boy did my mother brag about those chickens. She never fed them one day. So she was like some of my clients. But she bragged about having these fresh eggs. And I tell you, if she was proud, I remember I got these chickens at about a week old. And the day they laid the first egg, I got the first egg. I grabbed that egg so hard it cracked in my hand. I felt like a father who, I raised my child. They went to college and they brought home their first check. No, it's funny, but that's the pride and the joy I had inside of me. When we started our garden, and I'd never grown broccoli before. I couldn't even fathom broccoli growing in the Bahamas, but when I was able to go outside and see a head of broccoli comparable to a head of broccoli in the food store, wow. Let me tell you, that feeling that you feel, and then you go inside and you cut a few snippets of kale, a little bit of Swiss chard, a little bit of romaine lettuce, or whatever else you may have, then you get some sweet peppers, you get some tomatoes, and you make your salad. Let me tell you, that feeling is incomparable. Incomparable, all right? And I just want to say one thing. You see these lawns that a lot of us have in our yards? That is something that was started by royalty hundreds of years ago as a sign that I don't have to grow food because I am wealthy enough to pay someone to grow my food. So growing lawns is not something that we do because we just have a lot of extra space. The thing to do outside of the realms of royalty, was to grow your own food. My grandmother always talks about her aunts and uncles on the islands grew their food, her grandparents were farmers. But we moved beyond this point that, okay, we don't have to grow our food because we have the Ian Goodfellas, we have the Selima Harvers, we have the Tim Harvers, and all these different people who are going to grow our food. And I don't want to take away from the farmer because I believe that it's small farmers like these folks in here, and hopefully myself one day, that are going to properly feed the world. And I think Monsanto is the devil. I'll be open with that. I'm going to say it. And if you want to know why, I'll tell you privately. Not privately, I'll say it in a small setting, but I don't want to go off topic with that. But small farmers, one, they enable food security and sustainability because you help the environment. It's many small farmers who have these sustainable operations, small size where they can control. And small farms in the U.S., I think, are about 1,000 to 500 acres, maybe even 10,000 to 500 acres would be considered a small farm in the U.S. A small farm in the Bahamas would be anywhere from your backyard to maybe about 10 to 20 acres. Anything over that is a big farm in the Bahamas. I've been fortunate enough when I was in Cuba, I've seen 10, 15, 20,000 acre farms. Literally flat land, but your eyes cannot see the land, how big that farm is. And if you truly understand crop production, you truly understand management of anything, how is it that you can properly manage? And see, we in agriculture and most sciences, we'll take, I believe these tiles are about 2 square feet, or 2 feet by 2 feet, right? 4 square feet. And so roughly, I would take a piece like this in this quadrant here, and then another piece way down there, and then another piece way down there, and kind of get an analysis to say, well, all right, I got nematodes present here, but none down there, and just a little bit over there. You really think that's going to tell me how many nematodes I have on 10,000 acres? I cannot properly and sustainably manage that piece of land to the extent that I can say what exactly is there. But what will happen is because there are some nematodes present, they're going to go and douse it with pesticides, primarily chemical pesticides in most places, or most of the places we get our food from. And that's going to come home, and as we saw in Dr. Lightbourne's presentation, that's going to come home, and even if you wash it off, it's still going to be in your food. All right? To the next slide, please. All right, so the Abaco name, I've been fortunate enough to develop a good relationship with Nick and Daphne. I'm not sure if any of you are really familiar with them.
Yeah, they're great.
But Nick and Daphne operate the only certified organic farm in the Bahamas, and it actually is a agroforestry operation in the sense the name is a tree crop, and it comes from India. I was pleased to hear Dr. Harbour talking about it. And their project or their operation, if you speak to Nick, is primarily dedicated to the health of Bahamians. He's a diabetic, and he's been using it, I don't know, for the past 20, 30 years, and he has not had to take any insulin or any other diabetes medication. But it's a product, it's a tree crop that has been used in India for over 4,000 years for many, many different things. I mean, I've done some reading on it, and I was just in Abaco with them the other day, and he gave me this book that he apparently gives everybody to read. I had an hour to learn as much as I could, and I was quizzed unknowingly. But pretty much it helps with a lot of the ailments that we suffer from in the Bahamas, such as diabetes. It lowers the blood pressure, many other things. It's immune enhancing, it's antifungal, it's antiseptic. As well as they do a lot of health products. They do skin products, skin and hair, pet products, and agriculture products. As Dr. Hubber alluded to, neem kind of repels a lot of pests. And I tell you this, I was on the farm until like 7, 8 o'clock one evening. And if you're standing in the middle of those neem trees, you will not feel a mosquito. Wow. You won't feel any bugs flying around you. You step about 10 feet outside, and you will think you walked into a swamp.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy. But the tree itself repels, the odor that it gives off repels so many different bugs, so many pests. And also the oil, obviously comes, if you press the seeds, you'll get the oil and so forth. So that obviously promotes or is a natural product. Neem can be organic or inorganic. But I would think that any way you get neem, would be good. Obviously, we want to promote organic. Be careful of the term, but I think using agricultural or how would I put, biologically based pesticides and herbicides, well, herbicides are difficult, but biologically based pesticides and fertilizers, I would say it's most definitely the most sustainable way to do things because you're giving back to the environment. When you get a lot of your synthetic oil-based chemical fertilizers, you're getting oil which is coming from the ground. You have to synthesize it with something else, and it's going into a form that's not quite natural, that your body doesn't know how to deal with, that the earth does not know how to deal with, because it doesn't come from the earth. But if I take, as Dr. Harper said, as what's his name? Sorry, Tom. As Tom said, we take our leftovers from our vegetables, our kitchen scraps, and if you have a large enough compost, you can even put a whole dog in there, or a whole cow, or meat products, because you will generate enough heat to break it down properly. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but it's real. All right. If you have a fire big enough to generate the heat, it's gonna make it happen. All right. So these are different ways that we can definitely look at sustainability. You can give me the last slide, please. Sustainability and all these. And so again, I just want to go over everything I spoke about. Food security. Individual food security is basic backyard farming. If you start an egg operation, put a goat or two in your backyard if you got a yard big enough. Believe it, you won't have to pay anybody to mow your lawn. And after about 4 or 5 months, you can get some sweet mutton. All right? You can get ducks. Ducks are really good with keeping pests. But if you got some standing water and you're having a lot of frogs and mosquitoes, ducks will eat those buggers, and you'll be doing a lot better than someone who doesn't. All right? Chickens are very good with keeping worms and little crickets and stuff out the grass. Then they give you eggs, and after a while you can get meat. I wouldn't advise you to keep a cow. Just because a cow is probably too big for the average job, but I will say this, as a Bahamian and as someone who has studied in the U.S. and learned about the fact that you can't spread cow manure during certain parts of the year because of the frost and so forth, and it runs off into the water basins. We have a very shallow water table. You dig 2 to 6 feet and you're going to hit water. It rains, that's gonna seep straight through. So cow manure will go into our water table, which we drink, and which we bathe with. Cow manure is very, very toxic if it's put directly on your skin. So we have to be careful with what types of agriculture we do. I know there are a few people doing it here, but I personally, with my understanding and my knowledge, would not really encourage raising any larger livestock such as those. Again, so individuals, food security, which will encourage national food security, and then of course global food security. Might I tell you really quick, there's not a shortage of food in the world. There's a shortage of access to food in the world. All right? We waste a whole lot of what we eat. I work at a hotel. I can tell you what I see on a daily basis being wasted. That's only one hotel. All right? Let's think about how many are on this island, how many restaurants waste food on it. Us, when we go to the restaurant, how much food we waste regularly. All right? So be mindful when you don't finish your meal, or when you decide to throw something away. There's somebody probably less than a mile away from you on this island who wish they had those table scraps. All right? Sustainable agriculture, again, social, environmental, and financial. All right? Backyard farming, again, food, individual food security, self-sustainability, because you will save a lot of money. Imagine if you grow 75% of your produce consumption at home with very minimal input. Okay? It connects you with nature, keeps you connected with yourself, and keeps you active. And then, of course, the Abercrombie company, a behaving example of food security, because they're affecting our health by growing health products. They grow agricultural products that we get food from, and as well as they are a nation-minded company. So, thank you very much.